across the UK. James Wade on Talk Radio.
Right, welcome back. Very good afternoon to you, and off we go. The James Whale show back on Monday night, 10 o'clock, if I've got a voice left by then, hopefully. In the meantime, let's talk to our friend Erol Morkoc, who's from Republican overseas. Erol, good afternoon to you. Are you in this country or are you in America at the moment?
Good afternoon, James. I'm actually in Detroit, Michigan right now on a little bit of business.
Okay. In fact, last time we spoke, I think you were over in America. I was going to say they're going to be replacing you with somebody else.
I know, right? Actually, what happened, we had an event yesterday, a big event on the HMS Belfast. Tobias Elwood came to speak, but I had been in Brazil until September 1, which puts me in a red list country. And I'm considered a Brazilian traveler until September 11th. So I keep getting stuck in between and whatnot.
And did you ever realize that you were going to be sort of flying around the world in the way you are and behaving in that way, and then suddenly you get COVID, you can't do anything?
Yeah, I mean, nobody expected it. My business is, almost primarily internationally. So I've been on every single, let's say, stage of COVID testing, from the actual real PCR test they gave in the beginning to the fake PCR tests. They send people into your room now and just wipe the edge of your nose, because if you don't get if you get a positive result, you are going to dispute the result on your credit card. So I've seen the entire stages of this pandemic, as far as sort of the show security for travel that's gone on. I've had COVID, I have the antibodies, thankfully, but I think nobody expected the last year and a half to be how it was.
Well, I have got a cold. I've been tested. I don't have it, but I've had all the jabs. In fact, I'm looking forward to another couple fairly soon, hopefully. What are your thoughts about Biden announcing the new U.S. Vaccine mandate to turn the tide of COVID-19? Do you think it's going to go ahead, or are you going to have in America, like we have here, I suppose you have all the anti-vaxxers getting all upset about it?
I suppose it's let's say a three-pronged answer. On the first one, I don't want to castigate Mr. Biden as an evil person, and I do believe that his reasoning and the way he's at least expressed himself for his desire for vaccines and desire for a mandate, same as President Trump, who is very pro-vaccine himself, had been vaccinated, this sort of stuff. I think on the surface, it's not a malintent. However, what we're going to encounter in the U.S., the anti-vaxxers, of course, are the loudest people in the room. They don't really speak for anybody who's, let's say, even has some basic science knowledge in the concept of vaccines. However, what we're looking at here is a federal mandate, and we have police unions and firefighters unions as an easy example, and they're coming out and saying, "Look, we're not anti-vax. It's a matter of government requirement of what's being put in my body." The same "my body, my choice" on one side argument comes out to people who are very rational, people who've been vaccinated and are saying, "I would refuse to show a COVID passport, and I don't support the forcible vaccine." And I think that the majority of Americans, especially working in high risk environments, who have not been vaccinated, either have had COVID, or perhaps, as in my case, I had an autoimmune disorder. I had 7 rounds of chemotherapy like 6-7 years ago. My doctor, I was a little bit hesitant when there's something new, especially if I've already been inoculated naturally. So I think the anti-vaxxers are going to dominate the headlines, but the unconstitutional element of mandating medical, let's say, compliance is where the American First Amendment, and I guess Second Amendment in some degree, is going to come into play, because Americans don't like being told what to do. Even if they're going to do the right thing, they want to come
It's
to that
interesting, Errol, isn't it? The Americans don't like being told what to do, but they love telling everybody else what to do. I mean, come on.
Yes.
You've got a geriatric president who can hardly walk telling the world what they should do. The idiot has just pulled all your troops out of Afghanistan and now left the world to the hands of the Taliban. I mean, I know you have to be respectful to your president, but he's a bit of a nightmare, isn't he? Don't you want
I
Trump
mean,
back after all this?
he's beyond the nightmare. We hoped he'd be a nightmare. We hoped he'd be a disgrace. He's pushed on borderline treason with the abandonment of our allies, our British allies, our American, people in Iraq. But more importantly, the way that he almost bullies people who don't agree with him. Like it's oh, come along, it's a big tent. If you disagree with me in a week, hammer down. But then he can't remember his name. He references things recently like by the year 2020, we're gonna have it's 2021, man. What these kind of little things. So he's also not taken seriously. He's not taken seriously by serious adult Americans who look at him and they wonder, all right, this person can't, he tells the Taliban, let's work with you. And then he tells Americans, you're going to feel the pain if you don't get a vaccine. No tolerance. And I can't imagine what the global community thinks about us. I mean, I understand what they thought of Trump, maybe thought a little bit of brash, maybe, other adjectives you can use, but they certainly didn't think that he was a coward. And I'm sort of ashamed to say that that's the most polite word I can use for Joe Biden. He's a coward who hides from problems and expects that ministers and diplomats will make everything all copacetic when quite simply his vaccination and drive for public health, while commendable, has been done under some of what people appear to be like fascistic auspices that certainly give pause for thought, especially considering his mental state. How quickly can this deteriorate? If you disagree with getting a vaccine, how quickly until, some jackboot is at your door saying, show me your papers. And it's, as a historian, that's a quick and slippery slope that we often have come across. So it's terrifying having him at the charge right now.
Do you think there's a likelihood, excuse me, that Trump could return?
Yes, as a candidate, or do you mean before the election?
Oh, no. I mean, as a candidate, I mean, Kamala Harris is probably going to be your president in a year or so's time, isn't she?
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Yes, Donald Trump. So the funny thing with Trump, I was with him in Orlando when he made his first speech at the CPAC event, and he basically, for all intent and purpose, said he was going to run. However, as you saw with the interviews, he kept giving these coded, like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, which was very un-Trumpian. And I myself was a little bit confused. Said, I know you're going to run. Why aren't you saying it? Turns out it's a campaign finance sort of loophole that if you declare that you're running officially, then certain rules and fundraising change. So during the last year or so, he's kept his head down and made these very obvious hints. But I mean, I would bet the farm that you see a candidate Trump in 2024, especially when Kamala Harris, she could only get about 3% of the nationwide vote from her home state for the election. She dropped out before the primaries. She's not a competitive person outside of appointed bodies. Incredibly great corporate, social, and governmental climber, but not through the will of the people. Usually through the will of people that she's worked with. Donald Trump does have, 75, 76 million Americans who supported him directly. They didn't support an amalgamation of who wasn't him. And, he's already starting that base building, those rallies, those sort of grassroots things. I mean, a great example, and it's September 11th, it's a tough day for everybody, but, we had all those service members who were killed in that blast in Kabul, and it will be President Trump who's attending most of their private funerals, invited by those families. I think that says a lot when, people in grief make a decision that's much more honest, I would say.
I haven't seen much of President Trump actually involved in the 9/11 commemorations. Has he been invited?
I'm sure not. I'm sure nothing with the former presidents or in a state capacity would. Listen, I'll put it like this. Not only are they not inviting Donald Trump to almost any of the normal functions he would be, but people like myself who were mainstays on, BBC and other mainstream media during the campaign, they have wiped us off their map as long as they could get the Trump voices out of the BBC, get the Trump voices out of the CNN.
I wouldn't worry about the BBC is a spent force. Nobody bothers with them anymore.
Oh, I'm with you. I'm with you. But it's that same just general cross-board exclusion of the Trump platform. I mean, keep in mind the Taliban can tweet. Donald Trump can't tweet. I'm sure the Taliban would get an invite for the White House for talks before Donald Trump would. I'm not joking. That's a dead honest fact. I'd bet money on it. So
I
he's
mean,
not
I
invited. He's not welcome because he broke the oligarchy that the Bushes and Clintons and Obamas and who Pelosi's were running, and they hate it. They hate him for it, and they'll never forgive him for it.
You see, I don't understand that. I cannot understand how they can continue to ban Trump and allow the Taliban. I mean, how on earth can an organization like Twitter get away with that?
Well, they're walking themselves into an interesting corner. The concept of private property, a capitalistic belief system, is certainly in their favor. They own the property of their website. However, they wish to be considered a publisher of content, which means they are tax free. However, if they start to curate content, they become a publisher, and they have started to curate content. And the antitrust busting that came from Roosevelt, that came in American history. I mean, there's a massive amount of historical precedent for busting up oligarchic situations. And when the public forum recedes from perhaps the central plaza of your square to of your city center to the digital realm, the freedom of speech and your constitutional rights are not trumped, no pun intended, by terms of service. So as these legal loopholes are worked out, you're going to see either these companies have to switch their tax status and their place in this country, or you're going to see massive trust antitrust action after the 2020 elections, because the Republicans are coming at them, and they're coming at them hard. Even people who are on the more libertarian side, and they don't have any love from the left. The left thinks that Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook got Trump elected in 2016, and they never forgave him for it. So there's not a lot of goodwill for big tech, other than they happen to have the right politicians in their pockets, which, believe it or not, that really works. So,
Errol, thank you very much indeed for your time. I'll let you get back to what you're doing this weekend, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon. Erol Morkoc, who is from Republicans overseas, and he's overseas as well at the moment. We'll take a break.